Welcome to episode 104 of BrainThunder. We're a new channel and we have quite a lot of new people here with us today. And we've been getting some interesting comments actually, asking where we came from and how this all started. And one of the comments feeds into our topic of the day. So we're going to dispel any rumors before they take shape.
It was interesting to read.
Do you know what comment I'm going to read, Jess?
I think I do, yes.
Come on, what does it say?
Okay, well, actually, I would like you to read it.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Sorry, who are these girls and where did they come from? They seem speciously well funded for what appears to be a new channel. Are they the daughters of conservative cabinet ministers? I had a look at the second video shot in the south of France. Very nice, but this does not ease my suspicions.
Ooh. Very dramatic. So, can we address these rumors?
Yes, we just want to say to all of our BrainThunder subscribers that we are an independent channel. We are not indeed funded by the Conservative Party or any party for that matter.
So, Reggie, I hope this eases your suspicions. But this leads pretty well into our topic of today. Martha, can you introduce it?
Sure. So today we're going to talk about politics and the way that it affects our lives, from work to friendship to college or university to in fact, romantic partnerships. Mahir Tusi was with us last episode, and we thought that would flow well from last week's discussion. So I just want to ask you guys, why do you think people have such an emotional connection to politics? You know, it's a tale as old as time that you never talk about religion or politics during a Thanksgiving dinner or during a family celebration. What is it that makes politics so divisive?
I mean, I think it's, because it affects every aspect of your life, whether people want to admit that or not, because obviously some people aren't involved in politics, but it really does. More so, I guess, in different countries, but I think it brings about not just one debate, because you bring up politics and then you talk about one subject related to that one policy or one issue.
It's a snowball effect.
And it snowballs, exactly. So, and then the effect is you just can't stop it. And maybe if two people disagree, it will snowball and it might ruin the entire dinner. Like, I would never bring up politics usually at a dinner party.
Yeah. But I think it depends as well, because there are some people who are a lot more passionate about politics than others.
I agree.
So they get fired up a lot quicker.
Yeah. Do you think age plays a difference? Do you think that older people feel more comfortable debating politics as opposed to younger people? Does it have to do anything to do with millennials being more open-minded to other people's views? Or do you think that age doesn't play a difference in people's willingness to engage in political debates in family settings, for example?
Well, it's interesting you say that. I'd say in a family setting, it definitely does. I know personally from my experience, I don't always agree with my dad's political views. But we have our discussions. But the one thing he could always hold against me is, I'm older than you, I've experienced more than you, I've seen X, Y, Z happen, so therefore I can tell you that. Now, obviously, we can do our own research and I can argue that back. And I love my dad, in case you're watching. But I think in a family, in a family setting, that's definitely something that would be said. But maybe in a professional setting, maybe not so much.
It is interesting to think about politics and family, because growing up into a family unit, oftentimes you take on the views of your parents, and then you go into university and college, and then you start learning more about different political views, and you grow into your own. And I think, the reason why politics has such an emotional side to it when it comes to topics of discussion is because it relates very much to identity. Very similar to religion in that way. And so I was reading this research by Roseman, and he's a psychologist that argued that anything that affects an individual's ability to accomplish their goals will trigger an emotional reaction. And if you think about politics and the way that it affects us achieving our goals through, say, benefits or pensions or, immigration, for instance, all of those can have a direct effect on, say, finding employment or, any of those controversial issues that left versus right debate on a regular basis. What do you think about this? Do you think that political discussions have this emotional character because it's in the core of our identity and how much we can or cannot do based on who's in power?
Well, it has, I guess, if you use like our experience in the UK, it has become identity. It's, are you a Brexiteer? Are you a Remainer?
I agree 100%.
But I think also the reason people shouldn't maybe always talk about it is even if you agree, like say you're both Conservative or you're both Labour or whatever the political party may be, even within that now, there's so many subgroups and sub-views. So it's probably impossible to agree with somebody 100% politically.
Yeah.
Do you think people are as keen to expose what their political views
I
is?
don't think so. I think especially nowadays, because it's become so controversial and so divisive, and it's sort of spilled over from just political candidates to media as well. I think in media outlets and where we get our information from and things like this, I think people are being very protective of their identities, politically speaking. And that's interesting that you brought up, because I'm wondering, would you be friends with someone whose political views you cannot stand or do not endorse at the slightest? To what extent are we tolerant of very, very different political beliefs? Does it affect the way we live our life? Or can we have informed debates with our friends?
I think for me, and probably most people, it depends on where you disagree. If it's in terms of like fiscal policy or how they arrange the government in terms of spending, that's something you can debate. But whether someone has very different views in terms of rights or in terms of religious groups' rights or anything a bit more sensitive, then it doesn't work, basically.
Yeah, because I think also those political beliefs spill into your personality as well. So if you're, for example, very, I don't want to say extremist, but if you believe that certain groups of people should be treated differently to others by virtue of your character, and that translates into your political beliefs, then that would make it difficult because you fundamentally disagree on so much with that person. That would you really be able to connect with them friendship-wise or love-wise?
Yeah, it's very different, and I agree with that. And I'm wondering, for example, just to give a very real example, would you be able to be friends or hang out with someone that, say, is very against gay marriage or looks down to minority groups? You know, I can then see why politics becomes such a key part of our identity, because I would personally find it extremely hard to hang out with someone or be friends with someone or engage in conversation with someone that has such, I don't want to say extremist views, but has such hateful views.
Hateful, that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that would be very hard.
So at what point do you discuss with a new friend or maybe a new potential date your political views?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Actually. And I spoke to a number of people, men and women, this week, just in preparation of this episode, and I asked them, would you consider a romantic partner that has different views to yours? And I got a lot of responses, and some people said, absolutely not, because how can I raise a family with that person and raise my children? And some other people said, actually, I would enjoy this intellectual debate whilst being in a relationship with them. But I think where I stand, and I want to hear where you guys stand on that, is that there is a difference between political views and political values and general values that, I guess, are reflected from politics. For example, even if someone is of a different political party to mine, but they agreed on issues like family, or I guess here monarchy versus in America First and Second Amendment, or what school to send our kids to, public or private, I think that would be fine, even if they had a different political party. But we had such a big trouble in deciding on those things. It's almost like running a company and having your executive team have completely different ideas of where the company's going. It's just becoming impossible in the long run to run it effectively and be in a partnership that works.
But don't you find that political values, even values, not just beliefs, are something that change with time? So, for example...
That's interesting.
When you're young, you tend to be a bit of an idealist and you want things a certain way. So young people could be more prone to the leftist side. But then as you grow with your experiences in life, your political beliefs may also change.
It's funny because someone said to me yesterday, if you're not a socialist when you're in your early 20s, you don't have a heart. And if you're not a capitalist and conservative when you're in your late 30s, 40s, then you don't have a brain.
I've had this, yeah.
I've heard
That's like
That's really funny. Have you seen your political views change as you grow older? Because I definitely have seen mine
Yeah,
change.
I think so. But I still think it's something I'm educating myself on every day. Like, it's
Same.
so hard to know everything about politics. And I don't want to bring back, obviously, in detail, the topic of fake news again. But that's the thing. Like, you read something online and then is that right? So I'm still always learning every day. And then there's obviously politics in the UK. And then there's global politics as well. Like, it's a never-ending subject. And it's so fascinating. So maybe that is actually a shame that we don't talk about it more openly, because there is so many interesting discussion points to have.
100%. I think oftentimes, I'm not completely blaming the media, but in an effort to make it easier for us to digest, being millennials and not wanting to read encyclopedias and encyclopedias of knowledge, I think oftentimes certain political candidates are being associated with, say, or certain political policies with certain topics that are not necessarily all there is to it. For example, Brexit is often associated. If someone is a Brexiteer, oftentimes people will consider that person being, say, anti-immigration or anti-immigrants. But actually, if you sit down with them, all they want is maybe more controlled immigration or just skilled workers coming in. So I think we're very oftentimes ready to jump into conclusions about what being of a certain political party or even of a certain political camp within that party means, which is not necessarily always true.
I definitely agree with that. And I think as well, people who have those views are on a spectrum. Even Brexiteers, for example, there are some people who want certain versions of Brexit and other people who want different versions.
Agreed.
But you will automatically associate them with the more extreme views because that's what you see all the time in the news.
And that's easier. It's easier for you to label them. It's almost like as humans, we have this innate propensity to put people into boxes, and we do that with a number of things, and oftentimes it's just much more complicated than this. And I think it's very interesting that you brought it up, because I had a talk with someone who, for example, is in favor of Brexit, and I understood how much more complicated it is than we are made to believe, or than the average reader would get from just reading through, say, the headlines or some tweets once a week. It's much more complicated than this. Would you enter a romantic partnership with someone that has very different political beliefs to you, though? Jess, I didn't hear from you on that.
From my previous experience, I've never dated someone that has very strong, like, political beliefs in general, I would say.
Either way.
Like, usually quite centre, and I think I myself am quite centred in that sense. Probably not, though, because I know there's a difference between political values and your political view, but the two do interlink, and that also interlinks with in general, your values. So if you disagree too much, like we said earlier, how are you going to bring up children?
It becomes a problem.
Yeah, it kind
becomes
of does.
a problem. At what point do you start discussing this?
I think that depends on the individual. So, like, I like to talk about food and about many other topics. Like, for me, I don't usually bring up politics, whereas, for example, you're really, like, interested in politics. I'd say more so than myself. So for you, it definitely would come up.
Your general values and beliefs transpire as you speak to the person, what they feel. If they have certain hate towards a certain community, it'll come out straight away.
Exactly.
So all these things, you don't necessarily have to automatically address what their political views are, but you can get a sense of what they are.
Of where they're moving.
Of where they stand.
And it's interesting because when you do talk to those people, and I have spoken to people that obviously have very different political views to mine, but what I'm trying to decipher from our conversations is whether they're reasonable and whether they have a good head on their shoulders, and whether their political values are, I guess, inspired from facts versus emotion. So if I have a sit down and I go for dinner with someone and that person tells me, be it a friend, be it something different, and that person tells me, oh, I just hate all immigrants, we have a bit of a problem at that stage. Whereas if that person sits down and tells me, well, I vote in favor of this or against this or in favor of that candidate versus the other, because I do think we have an issue of controlled or uncontrolled immigration, or legal versus illegal immigration, because of these stats, because of these numbers, because of what this does to the country, I will more likely respect them, even if I say in that topic or another topic do not 120% agree with what they say. So I think it comes down to having a good a good head on your shoulders.
Plus, if you have a healthy discussion or debate, maybe you can end up changing their mind and their political view anyway, right?
If they're open-minded.
Yeah.
If they're open-minded. For me, that's the most important thing.
Yeah,
Do you think
same.
millennials are more open-minded than Gen Xers when it comes to, I say, changing their political views? And we did say that us millennials, and there's stats on that we are generally more socially liberal than Gen Xers and baby boomers. Does that mean that we're also more likely to change our views on what our political affiliation or political views are, or no? How do we differ from the older generations in that?
I think inevitably, millennials are still so young, they're going to experience a lot more of life. And as we said, political beliefs will end up changing with time. But when it comes to the question of whether millennials are open-minded or not, that's very difficult to answer.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jess?
I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for the whole
generation.
Yeah.
Precisely, because we can't put a label on the whole.
It's a hard question.
I think it changes a lot between older and younger millennials as well. But from my experience, I think we're quite young millennials. I feel quite open to hearing different views and different debates, more so than, say, Gen Xers. I think maybe it's an age thing where you've learned all there is for you to learn by that point. So if you wouldn't change your view by the time you're like late 40s or mid 40s, then you probably will never do. But I'm still shaping, and I think we all are still shaping our identity and who we are and where we stand on issues. So I definitely feel quite open-minded.
But is that just because we're young right now?
Maybe.
Because maybe when we're in our 40s, we will also be closed-minded.
Yeah,
that's the thing. I mean, I hope not, but...
I hope not.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, but that's more speaking from a personal perspective, right? We're more open-minded.
Yeah.
But then there's other millennials who have the snowflake type of personality who don't want to hear anything which offends them.
That's interesting.
So can you call that open-minded? I'm not sure you can.
I think as long as we are in a position where we're open-minded and we're ready to learn, ready to adapt, and ready to be grounded and reasonable and have a good head on our shoulders when it comes to political affiliation, political views, and understanding the difference of this and values, I think that there's no going wrong.
Yeah, I think the most important thing, being open to opposing views.
100%.
So thank you so much for watching another episode of BrainThunder.
If you liked our content, please support us by liking and subscribing. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.